Right. So maybe would you like to start by, how you found me? Why did you decide to fix this call?
Sure. I think, as with other people whom you've spoken to in the past, I found you via Quora, and I sort of understood the path that you had. Like you worked here in the US and then moved to India as a UX research manager, and I was sort of very curious about how you grew to that effect, and I wanted to learn more. That's how I started following you on LinkedIn, and I came across a post where you mentioned that you would be hosting sessions like these, just to give back to the community and such. So I messaged you on LinkedIn and fix this out.
Cool. Yeah, that's wonderful. And thank you for your kind words. And I'm super glad that you found some of my answers and content helpful. Yeah, so like maybe we can talk about, your journey so far, where you are in your career, and what is it that you're looking for, from
Okay,
this
so
session as well.
yes, I'll do that. For starters, I guess my story starts in India. I graduated from a PGDM in marketing communications from KJ Somaya, and worked after that for about 4.5 to 5 years in marketing communications and sales roles. Um, I worked with a couple of companies there. Also started my own venture, a sleepwear company. Uh, but right around then, I uh, I moved across the world to the United States because this is where my husband lived, and I saw opportunity in being able to learn a few skills, work over here, and that is why I also enrolled at the University of Washington in a program called the Masters in Communication Leadership, where I discovered UX research. The more I learned about the field of UX and about UX design and research, the more I realized that this is where my skills over the years, really come to a standstill and dovetail very well at. So I wanted to hone my skills on that. I worked on a bunch of projects as research insights lead or UX researcher, and tried to get hands-on experience alongside my graduate school. I graduated in June 22. Did a short stint, like a 3 month stint with Google as a contract UX research associate, where again uh, it was really like a nice round circle where I realized that yes, I was right. This is where I would like to work further on, and that really brings me here today. Over the past few months, I have been connecting with a lot of individuals who hold senior roles as UX researchers, as UX research managers, and I've been trying to get more context about how working here in the United States is like, how working in India is like. I do see myself as moving back to India one day. And today, I would like to primarily focus my conversation around that. Talk to you about how your shift from the United States to India was like, what you discovered along the way, what are some of the things you like, and probably not so much as well.
Thanks for that context, Anushi. So, just quickly summing it up, so we both are on the same page and we are talking about the same thing. So, you graduated from KJ Somaiya with a PGDBM and then have an experience of 4 to 5 years in marketing and communications domain. You also tried to start your own company and then moved to US to be with your husband, where you also enrolled in Washington State University
University
to
of
start.
Washington.
Sorry.
University of Washington.
University, yeah, I understand these are two different universities because like every state in US has. So okay, state that one, that one, right? And then while doing your master's in communication leadership, you stumbled into UXR and did some self projects or, like projects during your course, and then ended up in Google as a contractor, working in UX research. But owing to Google layoffs and other circumstances, you are now in a position to look for another job. And meanwhile, you are, expanding your network, talking to different people to understand the spectrum. So probably one day you can move back to India, or, if you can land a job in US meanwhile. Is that fair?
Yes, that sums it up.
Right. So, this session would be most useful if instead of focusing on me, right, like how my shift has been, we focus on questions around you, and then I can use my life examples to share, whatever my experience has been and what has worked for me and what has not. So, uh, because if we talk about me, then it becomes, more of like a, me session. So let's start with some questions around, how, to your point about how the shift looks like for a UX researcher, or, in a UX role from US to India, and, what are some of the differences that you are interested in understanding?
Um, for one, I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I don't know exactly where you were based, but I do realize that UX as a field has some hotspots. Like some cities where a lot of jobs are really concentrated in. Um, and I understand that there are a few cities in India which are becoming those hotspots now, like in recent times. Uh, what is your understanding of that?
Hmm.
You have the starting point.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, thanks for being on the spot and quickly formulating one. Um, right. So, to give you, an overview based on my understanding, there are actually some hotspots, as you rightly classify. It's not a widely spread field like engineering, where you can find jobs in any place, wherever, some companies are. So, like, for engineering, you could have jobs in like Pune, in Bangalore, in Mumbai, like all the metros, as well as tier two cities. There are engineers in Indore, in Bhopal, etc. But that is not the case with UX research, um, because simply of the fact that not every company can afford to do research. Like, you need budget and money to hire researchers and assign them projects, and then it requires travel and other stuff. At times these days travels do not happen as much. um so I used to work in Hyderabad, and the UX kind of was booming there. Having said that, there are never, a ton of UX openings, because it's a very rare field, and people have not come to realize the importance of research yet, in India at least. So um wherever, these big companies are, basically, who can afford to do research, is where the hotspot of research is in India. So, for example, a lot of companies are in Bangalore, like Google, Microsoft, Intuit, LinkedIn. So maximum research openings show up in this part of the India. And then there are also a lot of companies in Hyderabad. So, for example, Salesforce. There is also Microsoft and Google. There are also these companies in pharmaceuticals like Novartis, Dr. Reddy's, etc., who have these. The ADP has some openings as researchers. So I would say these two cities are where I have seen the maximum job openings and have interviewed for or meet researchers from these two. Besides that, I think Mumbai is also a place where all sorts of industries are there. So even in entertainment industry, you would see ZTV has some openings, and I'm sure some other similar creative companies uh, might have openings. So, in my opinion, these three would be it.
sounds exciting. I'm most from the answer you gave right now. I was most surprised by the fact that ZTV is looking for UX researchers. I mean, you don't traditionally associate UX research with entertainment, although it would be a very good match. But yes, uh,
I'm sure all of these entertainment companies have research openings. Maybe they don't call it UX research, which is a term which has come to associate more with the software industry. But they do have researcher openings. I mean, I'm not sure right now, but I have seen it multiple times.
absolutely. I think market research, UX research also happen to be parts of the same coin in some ways.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Um, my next question would be really about so, like I mentioned, I hope to be able to move to India at some point, and I'm very curious to understand. Like here in the US, we have a very structured sort of format, like a 9 to 5 job, and then you're done with the day for the most part, unless you have some really pressing, urgent timeline or deadline. But when I was working in India, uh, there wasn't a concept of a very strict, working hours or something like that. And a lot of time it would overlap, and that work-life balance was really missing. What has been your experience so far when it comes to that?
Great question, Anushi. And something we all grapple with on a day-to-day basis. Um, so you're right. I mean, there is overlap of personal and professional times, and if you think about it, it's mostly because a lot of these companies where we work at, they are headquartered in US, and a lot of times you end up working with the partners who are based in different countries, a lot of times in the US. So things like night meetings or early morning calls do come into the picture. Um, at the end of the day, it is up to each of us to figure out, how do we manage that balance. But that is going to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere, even though companies are making a lot of effort about, establishing those clear boundaries, and mental health is a priority. But uh, there are still, late night calls, etc. And it is not as smooth as it may be for people in US. I'm sure because they also have to, alternate and at times. But if you end up working with a multinational company, I would say brace yourself because it is going to happen. However, if you end up working for a domestic company, like Flipkart also, I work with Flipkart, and they also have a very solid research team, and the pays are good as well. It's since it operates in the domestic market, there were no night calls or early mornings, so the day pretty much looks like 9 to 5. So that is the case. I wouldn't position it as work-life balance, but it's uh, if it is a challenge for you, then uh, either you find ways to cope up or adapt to that, and you take out pockets of time from other times during the day. But it is not something we can move away with at any time. Yeah, you can set your own boundaries, like decide the time till which you want to take the calls, but um, yeah, and on this, I want to address one more important point. A lot of people also think, and a lot of people who come to me for guidance, they also feel that UX research is not a very technical field, and so um, probably there wouldn't be a lot of night calls, and you're not required to be present in a lot of meetings. But that is not the case. This job looks very much like an otherwise product management or design profile would look like, because at the end of the day you also are responsible for getting changes in the decision based on the insights, and your performance is also measured against the impact that you create. So you also have to be abreast with what is happening in your product, and find those opportunity areas where you can also talk in meetings and make increase your visibility. So it is not that, this field gives you the luxury of probably not attending night calls or early morning. So just to clear out that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like in a lot of ways, and I have had to work with product managers, and team members from the technology side of the company. So I do agree it is important for a UX researcher to be part of these calls, because that's really where a lot of the context setting happens. Crucial
Right.
calls. Yeah. Um, you touched upon something with regard to the pay scale when it came to Flipkart, and I was curious to understand, like over here in US, UX research is regarded as a well-paying job, and I do know that India is still catching up to that effect. But how mature do you see the UX research market in India becoming? You did mention that there are not as many roles available, but within the space of the companies that do have solid UX research teams, how mature would you say are their research efforts? How strongly are they associating with the need for UX research at the business level?
Good question. And I think you put it very nicely as well.
Job of
um,
UX researcher.
right. Yeah. So, to answer how mature the UX research market is, I don't think it's mature yet, because if you think about the design journey, as a design as a field and its journey in India, this is a term we started hearing like 5, 6 years back, since, probably, these big tech giants opened designer roles in India, and the people who had a creative flavor decided to do that. And then, you do not require a professional degree as such, and these jobs are paying well. This is more like a field of creativity when we talk about design. Um, and so, this has started catching up. A lot of people got interested in it. So I would say design is still like, not that old, 5, 6 years, and research, since it falls under design umbrella, it is fairly new. It is like, like since last 1 or 2 years, since people started talking about it on professional and social media, that people became aware that, there is such a field that exists, and there are some openings. Now coming to the kind of salaries. So there are still some companies who have research teams, but majority don't. So I know Flipkart has a team, because I worked with that company, and we were a team of like solid 10 to 12 researchers, and we had a research manager. And however, a lot of companies I worked with, which are in real sense multinationals, like LinkedIn, like Intuit, like what, like Google, they only have like one opening. They have one researcher opening, and they hire, at a mid manager level, mid senior level. What do they call it? Like there is low and then mid and then high. So they hire at the middle management level, and they pay that one person well. But besides that, there are no research teams in these companies in India. They have global research teams, and they mostly operate out of, US offices, but in different locations. They usually have one researcher, like one here, one in, like what, Mexico, one in Brazil, one in France. And um so for example, these are the companies I work with, but I have seen, there was a senior researcher opening in Twitter some time back, and that was just one opening. There was similar opening in Uber, but they were never hiring, teams in India. Like I said, this is a field which still needs to catch up. So you get paid, if it is get paid well, if it is a single thing. And I cannot speak for all the teams. I know Misho has a team, Swiggy has a team of researchers. I'm not sure about their salaries, but it would be competent with the, the designers. So, um, and I think the graph would look equally same as it may look for an engineer, how they start, and if you progress and gain more experience, how it may look like. So I think with experience, if you have a ton of experience, then of course they will pay you aligned with your experience. But it's not that um, you are paid any lesser. It would be synonymous with, whatever people in like this Silicon Valley earning. Yeah.
That helps. Thank you for sharing that. It's very surprising that a lot of these companies that you mentioned are talking about the next billion users, and they're still not having those research teams in place for specifically the Indian market. I think lack of like just there is an
It,
opportunity that is being wasted for sure.
yeah, it comes as a surprise because, and I can sense because, there's a lot of buzz. So if you are hovering around on LinkedIn, you would feel that there are a lot of researchers in India and they are working with big companies. They are like, I'm sure Microsoft has, a lot of openings, but at the end of the day, it would just be like, I don't think any company I have seen has like more than 10 full-time researchers, and 10 is also the number I saw in Flipkart, or these domestic companies like startups which have become big. But otherwise there have been just one openings, and they hire contractors at times to get some projects done, and that's it. um so I sense that you may feel that there are not a lot of openings, but that is the case. It is not to discourage you, but it is to understand. And this is a very practical piece of advice that I offer to a lot of people. Maybe not applicable for you because you have just started, and your first job has been in research. So maybe not applicable for you, but a lot of people who want to switch careers, let's say from being an engineer or from being in any field to a researcher, they get very disheartened by this fact that there are not a lot of openings. And the practical piece of advice is, do you want to like target these three researcher openings in the market, or do you want to target like these 300 engineering openings in the market? And just imagine the kind of effort and energy and rejections you would have to go through. So at the end of the day, it is also a choice that which path you want to pick, because this isn't going to be easy.
Yes. I think I've learned it in the United States also. It's not easy. It's not an easy part to pick. There is a lot of hustling and a lot of networking that needs to happen to make it out there.
Yeah.
Um, I know we're nearing the end of time, but I have one last question for you. I wanted to kind of understand what your favorite things about being a UX research manager in India are, and what are some things that you don't like so much.
This is a research session. One thing you like
Yes.
and one thing you don't. Um, yeah, good question. And somehow I feel good with this one question directed on me. Um, yeah, let me think about one thing I don't like. Right. So I think the like my favorite part of being a researcher in India is that I've been in this field for like 14 years, and I was a quantitative researcher earlier. Like I used to crunch numbers, and then that field did not work for me. So I moved to qualitative. So I kind of have seen that, journey in last 7, 8 years of being in this field. That I started as a contractor in Google, very much like yourself, and then I worked with a domestic company in a senior role. Then I worked with these tech giants like LinkedIn and Intuit these days. So having seen all of it, I feel pretty good about the situation I am in right now. As a researcher, a lot of people look up to me as, someone in authority, someone who knows their craft. and that brings the benefit of creating impact. So, like we are talking, and I'm able to create this impact in your life. Probably you'll gain one or two things out of this session that will stay with you, that would help you in your career in any ways possible. And similarly, similar things happen in in the workspace as well. Like people look up to me as someone who knows their craft and can bring a value that they cannot see probably very apparently. So just all the respect that comes with being in this field for such a long time, and the quickness that comes with it. You are kind of on your feet a lot of times, and you're able to guide your product teams in the ways they want. So that is very, fulfilling for me. The part about one thing I dislike is that the market is still catching up, and a lot of people are not aware of how UX research can help them in their products. So a lot of times it's just, the onus lies on a UX researcher to indicate um how people like product managers can utilize the skills of a UX researcher, because they just don't know. They feel all we do is talk to people and come up with some insights, even though talking to people is an art in itself. And if you compare the way a researcher talks versus like other cross function talks, there is a word of difference in the kind of insights that we bring in versus the kind of validation that they do for their products. Um so it's very challenging at times. It's a major reason of conflicts, I would say, in a lot of researchers lives, day-to-day lives, that people just don't understand how this works, and it is very tough for them to trust, because it's a qualitative field. There are no numbers associated with it. So even if they don't know how an engineer may work, but they know that they write code and there's something very tangible that they create as an output. In our case, that is missing. And at a lot of times you end up feeling, why do I have to take the onus of explaining to everyone what we are doing or how does our area looks like? It's a huge burden. It brings a lot of frustration. And to my point earlier, that a lot of times I have been the sole researcher in these companies, like over a year of over a tenure of 2.5 years in LinkedIn, for example, in Intuit. I was the only researcher, so it was me who had to, do all this, spread all this awareness. Versus when you have a team and everyone is doing the same thing, you accomplish your goals rather quickly. So that is even another challenge, that you are a single person in your role in over here, and you have to do your work. You also have to spread awareness. You also have to do some extra things, like take a workshop to make people understand about user research 101. And that is the really sucky part.
Okay.
Having a team always helps, is what I'm saying. So even though you end up working with these giants, being a solo researcher is extremely tough.
Thank you for sharing that. And somehow that makes me feel that it was a very nice way to end our talk today. Challenges, the never-ending challenges that we as UX researchers face. One of them being talking about UX research 101 to
Yeah.
somebody who is right at the top and helping them understand why this is important. So yes.
Right. And I'm glad that you are able to get that and see the irony of it. Uh, One last question, before we go. What is it that your next step is looking like?
I have been like my next step is in my job hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have been looking for jobs for quite a while. And currently, the market here in the United States is not all that good. It's been a little sloppy for a while now, and I have since I think a couple of months now been looking for other alternate positions, similar positions to apply. I have found success with one of them. It's as a market researcher. I'm strongly considering it. I know there are not a lot of overlaps between UX research and a market researcher's day-to-day workings, but I do believe that there are transferable skills that I will be able to talk about in my future job interviews. So
Right.
hold on to that.
That is great, and congratulations for procuring that position. And you are on point that these fields are interchangeable and overlapping. So you definitely would gain a lot of skills that you can utilize further in your UX research journey. So good luck, Anushi, and yeah, I'll leave it to you here. I would really love if you could, drop in some lines of feedback on the Instagram messages if possible. I know we are connected there,
Yes, I'm following you on Instagram.
right? So if you can just, send me a message with, how this call has helped you, that would be extremely helpful.
Yes, sounds great. I will do that. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Anshul. This was great. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Sounds good. Bye bye. You have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.